Welcome, geeks, to another exciting episode of Rockin the Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you're all here. I hope you've had a good week. I know I always start off talking about the weather, but in America, I did want to say a shout out to all my friends dealing with the heat wave that a lot of cities are dealing with right now. I heard today that Death Valley, which is here in California, is going to reach 130 degrees. I don't know how much that is Celsius, 130 degrees today. And other places are going to reach 120. So please stay safe, drink a lot of water, take salt pills, and come visit me in San Diego, where it's going to be in the mid 70s today. All right. So welcome to show number 84. I'm really glad that Vahid is here. I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I'm going to screw it up. And he's all the way from Iran, so I'm really glad he's here. He was on a conference. I saw his session on a conference, and I really liked him. And now he's here. So if you have a good conference session and I see it, I might just invite you too. So go out there and speak. All right. So let's get going so we can start talking to him. So I wanted to everybody who's like in the Europe area, I'll be in Copenhagen on August 30th, speaking about code performance. I'm working on the presentation right now, and it's all going to be, comparing the difference between .NET 6 and .NET 8. And you're going to be really surprised about some of the speed improvements between .NET 6 and 7 even and .NET 8. And there's a lot of things that have really sped up in .NET 8 that you're going to want to see at this at my session. And there's also some things I'm finding that's kind of slowed down too. And I'm not too worried about that yet because this isn't really software, but I'm still going to present those that data if you come to the developers conference. The developers festival next month. So I hope to see you there. And if you do come, please come say hi. I love meeting conference attendees and talking with them and everything. So I'm going to be there a whole week. So make sure you stop by and say hi if you're there. Also, I'm proud to announce my brand new book is out a week now. Rock Your Career, Surviving the Technical Interview, available on Amazon, everywhere Amazon prints books. And it added, I think, almost close to 70 pages, if I'm remembering correctly, of new information, including how to leverage AI in your job search, which actually, I have to give credit to Simon, who's my producer for that, because he mentioned that to me one time. So I know a lot of people are using AI to not only make their resumes look better, but also in the things they write and things like that. I'm using it a lot in what I'm writing. So anyway, I hope you pick up a copy of the book. Some people are buying it. I wish more would, but keep trying. Also, if you go to spargin.net, I have an open source library. I'll be releasing a new version, a featured release at the beginning of next month. I'm always working on it. There's some cool new things in the new version I'm going to release. So I hope you go check it out. It's basically all the common code I've been writing since .NET 2.0. So it's a lot of code in there. Well, just the stuff that I write over and over again, and I don't like repeating myself. So when I don't like writing the same thing more than once, I put it in Spargin and do that. And I also have a dev tool out there too that helps you clean up all the cached and temp files that Visual Studio and other programs leave laying around. And also it has a backup where it scans your entire computer for all the source code and then quickly backs it up for you, especially in the turbo mode. And I use it every single day that I'm coding. And I hope you download it and try it too. There's not a lot of people using it. So I hope you give it a try and see how valuable it is to you, especially the next time you lose some code that you've been writing for a couple of days. So Speaking about code, .NET 8 Preview 6 dropped this week. I installed it a couple days ago so I could do some benchmarking on it. And so go check it out. It actually works pretty well. Like I said, I'm seeing some slowdown in a couple things, but other than that, I've been really impressed. And if you're not looking at a .NET 8, you should be, especially if you're on .NET 7, because .NET 7 is not a long-term support. So if you're on 7, you better start thinking about going to 8 right now, because I don't know how long Microsoft's going to keep support for that, but I can almost guarantee you it's not going to be very long. So, all right, I'd like to welcome on Vahid. He's a software engineer, international speaker, book author. He has more than 17 years of experience in the field of information and communication technology, and more than a decade of experience in teaching different courses in DevOps, programming languages, databases at universities, institutions, and organizations in Iran. So welcome.
Hello, David.
Hey.
I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I'm really happy to see you again after the amazing Code Quality Conference.
Yeah, me too.
It was really great.
Yeah.
As you say, my name is Vahid Farahmandian. I was born in 1989 in Urmia city, but I'm currently living in Tehran, Iran. I have around 70 or 80 years of experience working in the software development area. These days, I have my own company called Spoota, and in Spoota, we're just providing the software services for the different organizations and the companies in Iran. Our services are limited to the Microsoft services, and we're just working on the services nowadays in Iran. And again, I'm so happy to be here, and I hope that we have a great session tonight, getting introduced with the Microsoft Azure DevOps and getting introduced with these services. And okay, I'm here and ready to,
Yeah, I'm glad you're here too. It's I always enjoy, not only meeting but speaking with developers in different locations, especially different countries, and especially a country as different as Iran, than other countries. And I was telling you before the show started that my new neighbors are from your country, and the husband's a software engineer. So this is like the first time I've lived next door to a software engineer. So I don't know if we're going to be geeking out at any point, but maybe. We have happy hours down at the pool on Thursdays, so we'll see. But I always enjoy learning how, and we were talking a little bit about this, which you'll share during the episode, of just the differences in not only developers but how things run in different countries, because we're pretty spoiled here in America, and because we get pretty much anything we want, and not all countries are like that, right? So I think people like myself need to think about that and be more cognizant of those differences, right? So we can help developers, right? That's why I like learning about different countries and different developers, is because that gives me a better way to help them if I can understand, what they're going through, right?
Yeah, of course, that's great. But we should think about this, that the conditions and situations are not equal in every country. Of course, in the Middle East, we have totally complete conditions from what we have in the United States or what we have in Canada. The Middle East, all the conditions and situations and all the formulas here in the Middle East are totally different from the whole of the world. And we are struggling with the problems that it might be really funny for you who are living in the United States. We're just struggling with the first phase of our requirements. And it might be really frustrations for the people who are living in these countries. Of course, myself as someone who has been teaching for many years, it's very interesting. It's very interesting to me to see the growth of people, dealing with people doing cool things, or dealing with teams that are teams in the sense of in the true sense of a word, and just working with this kind of cool teams are really great and have a very great vibe for me. But this is not the whole story. The story sometimes you get some. This story might have some complexity. Unlike many people, of course, money had never the priority for me or for my colleagues in Iran. We're just struggling. I told you that we're just struggling for something else in Iran. We're just struggling to being alive. We're just struggling to saying that, hey, we're standing, we're working. Yeah, we're human, and of course, we need to shut out our very vital and very first requirements that we need these kind of things. And these are things that you might never be struggling in the United States. In the United States, you are not struggling with your network connectivity. You're not struggling with your, with you buying a laptop. I will tell you that in Iran, if you want to buy a laptop, a junior software engineer, if needs to buy a laptop and starts his career, he might need to spend around 10 months of his salary.
Wow.
If he does not eat anything, if he does not go anywhere, and if he does not wear anything, and after 10 months, he can afford a new laptop. It's really, it might be really funny for you in the United States, because I told you the situations are totally different. This was what I told to the MVP team, I was talking to MVP teams last week, and I told them that you should not use the same formula to analyze the Middle East developers with the whole world's developers. Here, the problems area, here the situations are completely different from what you have in the United States. And using the same formula to analyze the developers to afford them the MVP prizes, it will not create equity. And of course, many of the services needs to be revised in this way, I think, or the politicians needs to revise their talent. The second one I think seems to be impossible.
Because you're telling me you can't even download the .NET SDK, right?
No, we can download the .NET SDK. I told that we're waiting for that day that we're being prohibited from downloading .NET SDK, because we are not able to download anything else. For example, we are not allowed to use the NPM services to download the NPM package. We need to use the VPN. We need to use the proxy services. We do not have access to the cloud services like Microsoft Azure, like AWS, like Google Cloud, like IBM Cloud. We do not have to use the Oracle services, and we do not have to use many of the services. We do not have to use the Firebase services in order to develop our mobile applications. And with these things, we're waiting that days that we're getting prohibited from downloading even the .NET SDK. It might be fine. Even we do not have access to download the Microsoft Windows. We do not have access to this operating system. But we need to be alive, and we need to tell ourselves that we're a software engineer. What kind of software engineer you are that you do not have access to even to the operating systems?
I know. Gosh, it must be such a struggle to so during when the song was playing, I was wondering, is there a cloud provider in Iran at all? Like something the government has propped up, or is there anything that you can use? And
we have the private clouds in Iran, but our private clouds are limited to the organizations, and some limited organizations have developed their own private clouds. But clouds as a main, the cloud like the Microsoft Azure cloud or AWS cloud, we do not have clouds like this. The clouds that we have nowadays in our enterprise are totally different from what we have in the Azure or we have in the AWS. So as a sum up, no, we do not have any public clouds that we can use them in order to develop our applications. No, we do not have this kind of clouds in Iran.
That's got to make, developing apps like, mobile apps, things like that, a lot harder when you don't have something like an Azure or an AWS or something like that in multiple. Well, I don't know if Iran's big enough to have multiple regions, but what I'm talking about, different locations and things like that. So, wow, it's I feel bad for you all there, that because to me, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I think that most developers, we're in this job because we like helping people, right? We like helping people in their jobs or at home or with their health, right? Health is super, super important. That's all being, going to AI and all that stuff right now, right? But I'm sure none of that's going to work for you all. So it's got to be so much tougher to write anything there, with this kind of stuff going on.
Yeah, of course. Imagine that we have a community of 5 million, around 5 million developers in Iran. And imagine that we're going to ignore this potential.
Yeah.
And we're going to say, of course, we're not the only country who has provided access to the online services. Of course, in Iran, Afghanistan, in our neighbor countries, we have great potential, we have a great community, but we're going to ignore all of them. And suppose that what the world is going to be ignored. A 5 million community is not things that we can ignore it very easily. Of course, the one person is one person nowadays in today's world. Imagine that we're going to ignore the 5 million potential, and we're going to say to them, okay, we do not need you to work for us, or we do not need you to be alive. It's not fair. It's not fair. Even when I see how much politics involved for a technical work, it's strange for me. Suppose that in Iran, a software engineer faces a world of problems that no other software engineer faces. Suppose that we're going to work with an international company and we do not have access even to get back our money because we're not connected to the international banking system. So we're not able to get back our money. So working with international companies, again, is another barrier for us in Iran. Or as you told and as we talked before, we do not have access to the online cloud services. It might be really tough. The question is, how much can a person, as a human being, not as a technical person, tolerate these problems? These are the things that really makes me and my Iranian friends and colleagues uncomfortable and disappointed. My effort all these days, all these years has been to show my friends and colleagues in Iran and all over the world that, hey, look, we're live, we're standing, we're working and doing cool things. Of course, I just follow your activities in supporting the talented people in India. I think it was the supporting the Islam, if I remember it correctly.
Yeah, it was Voice of Islam.
It was a great activity you are doing. I really admire your activity very much. I think we have a similar potential in Iran, and it may seem strange to you, but the new software engineer, as I told you, that to afford to buy a laptop has really complex problems in his life. Of course, if he does not eat anything or if he does not do anything, he might use his 10 months salary to buy just a laptop. It's strange to say that I've tried several times in the recent years to organize free training courses in Iran, but it seems that this kind of activity, again, is not enough. And really, like India, we need an international movement and support. The technical potential in countries like Iran, like India, like Afghanistan, countries like this is really significant, and we need to pay attention to this potential again. Once again, of course, we need the international movement here.
Yeah, it's I think it's something we all need to think about, right? And because, well, I've got lots of questions, but maybe we should start talking about Azure DevOps. Because I've never talked to anybody, from your country, one-on-one, and so I could spend hours just asking you questions. But let's talk about Azure DevOps. So what do you want to talk about for that? Oh, before you start, everybody that's out there who's watching live, please make sure you post your questions. We'll get them in a minute or two, and I'll ask them as fast as I can, as long as we have time. So make sure you post your questions. Okay, go.
Okay. Today I'm going to introduce the Azure DevOps services. Of course, I'm one of the big fans of Azure DevOps, and I like the Azure DevOps, and I think it's really great and cool tool. And every enterprise and organization needs tools like Azure DevOps in their organization or in their companies. And I'm going to show you the different parts of Azure DevOps and getting introduced with this service. If you agree, we can get to the my screen, and I can show you the Azure DevOps. Yeah.
Well, you shared your screen already. Good.
Okay. Do you have my screen? Is everything okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. As you see, here is the Azure DevOps services. It has really cool things. The left-hand side is our organizations, and the right-hand side are projects inside your organizations. Each project have its own services. Each project can have its board services. It can have its repo services, pipeline test, and artifact services. Why I say that Azure DevOps is a really cool tool, because I think it's a real total solution. By using Azure DevOps, you can have the project management tools besides your repositories, besides your CI/CD tools, besides your artifact management tools. And if you add the Azure services to the Azure DevOps and you get benefits from the Azure monitoring services, you will have a really great end-to-end solution in your organization by using just one product. It's really interesting. If you need to ignore Azure DevOps, of course, you might need to use products like Jira instead of the Azure boards in order to manage your products. Or you might need to use tools like GitLab or other Git providers, or other source version controllers like a Subversion Control or Mercury, or other things, instead of using the Azure repos. Or you might need to use the tools like Jenkins, Circle CI, in order to implement your CI/CD scenarios instead of using the Azure pipelines. For test plans, you might need to use use the Selenium or the other tools instead of using Azure DevOps test plans. Or for the artifacts, you might need to use tools like ProGet, like MyGet, or tools like, the Nexus services for your upstream managements, instead of using Azure DevOps artifacts. Of course, I myself prefer to have just one product, just learn one product, just face with one kind of complexity in my organizations in order to manage all my works. I think this would be great achievement for my company, because I think the real success is in the simplicity. As I talked about in the previous code quality conference, the real success and the real benefit of software engineering is to solve the most complex problem with the simplest available solutions. Of course, the Azure DevOps has this simple solution for you. However, these days, tools like GitHub or GitHub Actions are getting completed. But I think even with all the advancements in GitHub or other tools, Azure DevOps is, of course, my first choice, my own first choice. So
before you start, I just wanted to give my 2 cents really quick before you started talking about it, and that is, I completely agree with you. I've been using Azure DevOps before it was Azure DevOps, right? And I like it much better than GitHub. And for all the reasons you mentioned, right? You have everything in one place, right? And I feel some of the services in Azure DevOps, because they are more mature than the services on GitHub, are better and easier to use, right? Than GitHub. GitHub keeps putting out stuff, and I'm going, yeah, I'll wait a couple of years before I use that. And so I wish Azure DevOps was more cool, right? GitHub is cool, right? Everybody's on GitHub, right? But nobody ever talks about Azure DevOps, which, like I said, I've loved ever since it came out, and I probably still have some repositories up there, but I pretty much on GitHub because of everybody likes GitHub more for some reason. But anyway, go ahead.
By this sentence, I should say that you are my good friend. Of course, I love all the people who loves the Azure DevOps. Of course, it was joking. I was joking. Here we have the Azure DevOps board services, where you can define your work items, where you can manage your works, and you can manage your projects using some predefined process templates. For example, you can manage your works in your project using the Scrum process template, or using Agile process template, using CMMI process template, or if you are just a newcomer to Azure DevOps and you do not want to face with this kind of complexities, you can manage your projects using the basic process template, which will give you very limited work item types and very limited procedures, and the minimum required procedure units to manage your project. In board services, you can really easily define a new work item, new different types of work items. These are some predefined work item types here, but of course you have the ability to create your own work item types. One of the big plus points for Azure DevOps is its ability to extend. I mean that you can extend Azure DevOps just by your requirements, and you can change it as you need. It has really rich libraries in order to change the Azure DevOps. For this kind of tools, it has very great APIs and REST APIs and CLI tools. You can customize almost every part of the Azure DevOps. So let's get again back to the Azure DevOps and create a new work item. For example, I'm going to create a task work item here. Okay. You can simply add some title for it. For example, task here. You can assign your task to different people in your team. You can start chatting with your teammates using the comments, or you can manage the states of your work item. Of course, I need to save it in order to see the states. You can move your work items around this different states. Again, you can customize the states based on your requirements. You can even divide your work items based on the business area. For example, suppose that you're going to develop an ERP system. You can separate the financial work items from the work items that are being used to create the accounting subsystem. You can totally separate this work item using the area capability, and you can put your work items in different iterations during your project. After saving the work item, getting back to the work items screen, you're going to see your work items. In the board menu, you have the ability to visualize your work items and see your work items in the Azure boards. Of course, the boards are some things that you need to track your work items in a higher level than the tasks. That's why you have the features and backlog items here, and you don't have the tasks here. It seems to be Kanban board. Of course, if you need to have some sprint boards and you need to follow up your task, you need to switch back to other boards that I'm going to introduce with that boards too. Even you can very easily, again, define work items from the board screen too. By clicking on new item, you can easily create a new product backlog item here. So let's, for example, call it test backlog and add it to the top of my product backlog. Okay, now I have my work item. I can drag and drop in different columns and change their states based on these situations. By getting to the backlog menu, I can organize my product backlog. I can organize my sprint backlog. I can order my backlog items based on their business priority. I can again put them in the different sprints, which I have defined them in my project setting screens. By getting to the sprints menu, I can follow the my sprint board. That's where I can monitor my tasks. I can again follow up my teammates' works in one sprint. By getting to the queries, I can define very interesting queries using my work items. Azure DevOps has a really great capability in defining queries. It has introduced a new query language called WIQL, or Work Item Query Language, which helps you to organize and create queries just like your TCQL commands. That's the screen that you can create your queries very easily. By using delivery plans, you can have, again, a higher view of your products, your milestones, and you can manage your milestones. That's it's very similar to the Microsoft projects. Silver Client is going to be a very minimal version of the Microsoft project in order to manage and monitor your milestones. And in analytics view, the most interesting parts of the board servers, that's where I really like these parts. The analytics view is where you can integrate the Azure DevOps with Power BI, and then you can visualize your total Azure boards in your Power BI software. There is some predefined analytics view here, but of course, if you need to have your own analytics view, you can create new views by getting to the new view window and define the new view based on your requirements. Or if this kind of views, again, are not enough for you and you need something more than this kind of stuff, so you can, again, create your own extensions and extend the Azure DevOps in this parts of the service based on your requirement. I'm just going to introduce the Azure DevOps in the higher level. Of course, I'm not planning to deep dive into the Azure DevOps. I'm just introduce yet. That's why I'm going to just saying some high-level sentences. I'm not going to deep dive into it. That's all the service has in place. Of course, if you need to customize your board service, you can get to the organization settings section. Here in the process section, the board process sections, you can see the predefined process templates, which I told you, the basic Agile, Scrum, and my process templates. You can extend these process templates, or you can totally change this process templates. For example, I'm going to create inherited process from the predefined Agile process template, and I'm going to name it, for example, my own Agile. Okay, now I have my own process template, and I can get into this process template. And for example, I'm going to say that, hey, I'm not going to define any bug in my process template, but I'm going to define a new work item type. For example, the follow-up work item, and I'm going to put the airplane as an icon to it and the red color for it. As you see that I create the totally new work item type, and here I'm going to I'm going to design my work item creation form. I'm going to say that, yeah, I have a field, let's call it that's name, it's kind of text, and add the fields to my form. Okay, that's enough. If I get to the process or my Azure DevOps homepage, and I'm going to create a new project, let's call it test project. Here in the work item process section, I can say that, hey, please use my own Agile process template instead of using Agile. Right. By stating this, it means that we're going to we will be able to create a work item of type following up, and we're not going to have bug as a work item type. If I get to the board section, the work item menu, as you see, we do not have any bug in place, and we have new work item type called follow up, and it has red color. And if I get into the follow up page, I can see that I have a field called name, which I put it in my form, and I can fit it by my own value, and again trace my project based on these values. As you see, it's really easy to customize the process template, but just by using a simple clicks, I totally changed my whole software project management process. The other very interesting service that Azure DevOps provides is its repository services.
Oh, before you move off the boards, I just want to say that I personally like using the boards in Azure DevOps a lot better than Jira. I don't like Jira that much. I struggle with it. You know, I think it's too noisy, you know, and I've always felt that the boards in Azure DevOps are a lot simpler to use. And as you showed, they're really easy to modify. I've never tried to modify anything in Jira because I don't like it, but, you know, but yeah, it looks like, you know, really powerful, you know, especially if it looks powerful to me. But anyway, yeah, let's talk about repos now.
Oh, I'm totally agree with you. I think Jira is really cool and really great tool, but it's really complex. But on the other hand, Azure DevOps is just enough for you.
Right.
It's really just, if you need some more complex operations, or you have very I don't know, very educated, Jira-oriented product management teams, okay, there's no problem. You can easily integrate Azure DevOps with the Jira and synchronize your work items to the Jira and put your product management teams to work on Jira. But please do not force your development teams to struggle with Jira. They can Azure DevOps board, it's just enough. They can handle their daily works and daily duties. And at the back stage, I can synchronize all these things with the Jira, and okay, you can go to the Jira and work with that complexity. However, I think that kind of complexity is not very beneficial. But okay, some other ones,
developers don't need that complexity, right? We just need to update tickets and move them from one column to another. That's basically all we need, right? You know, all the other stuff should be done by a project manager or somebody like that, right? We shouldn't be making templates. We shouldn't be, you know, doing all the things you just showed, because that's really the job of somebody else, right? We should just be updating stuff, right? And that's my opinion, at least. I think developers these days spend too much time doing stuff like this, which doesn't mean anything to the product too much, right? And so okay.
That's great points to say. Okay, the next service is Azure Repo Services. Using Azure Repo, you can make use of the different source control systems. You can make use of Git, or you can make use of TFVC, the Microsoft lovely version control, the Team Foundation version control system. You can define different kind of projects using the Git as their version control, or they can use the TFVC as their own version control. The Azure DevOps supports both of them in one place. Of course, based on the architectures that TFVC have, you cannot define more than one repository inside the project using TFVC source control system. If you have a different kind of projects and you need to host different kind of your different project in Azure DevOps, you need to define different projects in Azure DevOps. But if all your projects are going to use Git as their version control, you can define one or many Git repositories inside project in Azure DevOps. And again, creating the repository and working with the repository in Azure DevOps is really straightforward. You have here a drop-down list which you can create a new repository, or you can import your remote repositories inside the Azure DevOps. For example, I can import my GitHub repository into Azure DevOps by using some clicks, by providing the clone URL, and then start importing my repository from GitHub into Azure DevOps. Of course, there's some limitations using UI import wizards. If you need to move the whole history of your version control, you need to use commands, and you need to use the command line tools in order to import, in order to migrate your repositories. Besides the management of your files, you can view your commits history here in the commits page. You can view your pushes, or you can view your branch in the branch menu. The branch menu is one of the most useful parts of the Azure Repo Services. Here is where you can define different kind of branch policies over your production branch in order to protect your operational branch. For example, you can put the minimum requirement number of reviewers before merging the pull request inside the master branch, or you can let's turn it off again, or you can check for linked work item before merging the change into your master branch or into your destination branch. You can check for comment resolution, or you can limit the different merge types. You can say to developers that you are not going to merge, you do not have access to merge your change, and you need to rebase your change. Okay, I can put limit into the merge types by just unchecking the merge in my branch policy page, and say to developers that you are only allowed to rebase your change. Of course, these are some great facilities. Or you have the build validation here. you can get a build validation prior to merging the change into your product to your operational branch. Or you can check, you can do a status check, you can send, I don't know, this email, you can send the SMS, you can add some reviewers to the branch before getting merged, before the chains are getting merged with the destination branch. The branch policies screen here is really, again, simple, it's really useful and really straightforward to manage and define your policies here. The other things that you need to handle over your branch is your branch security. You can easily get to the branch security menu and define the different access to your branch. For example, I can say that, for example, let's say that Vahid, for example, does not have access to contribute on this branch. As you see, it's really, again, straightforward. By just using 3 clicks, I denied access to a branch. That's what if you need to do the same thing in the GitHub or in the GitLab or in the
it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not. That's not this easy. By using this 3 clicks, you can deny or allow the access for people in order to use these kind of stuff. It's really, again, great things. Another cool things that Azure DevOps has is tags. You can put tags on your branch in order to manage your versions or any other things. But mainly we use tags to manage our versions. For example, saying that, hey, this point is our first version, that point is our second version. You can use tags, and working with tags. The final part of the Azure repo service is the pull request sections. Just like the branch section, it's, again, very important and very useful part of the Azure DevOps. You can create the pull request, again, by just very easy steps. I just click on the new pull request. I'm just waiting for the screens to get appear. It's, again, one of the other problems that we have in this list. Internet connectivity speed is really disappointing here in this country.
Well, where you're presenting from, what is your internet speed there? How much down do you get?
I'm currently presenting from Tehran. I can show you the speed test of my internet.
Yeah.
The speed test itself. Okay, as you say, I have VPN. And the VPN blocked my access to Google. So let's get back to Azure.
Never mind.
Okay, the pull request strings, I think that's not going to be showing this easily.
That's okay. Yeah.
Okay, seeing that's something. Okay, great. We have something in place. Okay, I can put the title on my pull request. For example, this is test pull request. Assign the reviewers to my pull request in order to review my change, or assign work items to this pull request. And then click on create to create a pull request. After pull request has been created, the different reviewers can come to the pull request screen, to pull request page, and put their votes there. They can approve the change, they can reject the change, and finally, after putting all their votes, I can complete the pull request, or I can totally abandon the pull request and delete the pull request. In the files tabs, you can view the files that are being changed. In update section, you can see the different comments that's being happen over this in update sections, you can see the different updates being happen over your pull request. And the comments tabs, you can see the different comments that are being involved during this pull request. And as you see, again, this is really easy to handle pull requests here. Of course, very detailed information about pull requests. I've provided some detailed information about pull requests in the previous conference, where you can put the Azure DevOps and SonarQube all together and do the automatic code review over your change. And after getting a validation from SonarQube, you can approve the change or reject the change. Of course, this kind of integration is really great. At the final point about the repository service, as you can see that I create a pull request, and at the back stage, Azure DevOps started to analyze my change and states that you have some conflicts in your codes. Of course, it means that you are not able to automatically merge your change with the destination branch. And again, this Azure repo service, it seems to be really simple without any further complexity, without any struggling with what's a cherry picks, what is really in the Git, what are the technical points of Git. You're just working with the repo, you're just working with Git commands and Git procedures by using just some very simple procedures and very simple clicks.
Yeah. Before we move on, we did get a question about the boards page. He's asking, I only have the option to create a new story. So for a bug, I have to go to work items and create the bug there. But in the other organization, I have it. How can I configure it? You know what?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, working with bugs is the point of attention that teams needs to pay attention. Of course, one of the duties of the project management teams is to define their bugs area and defines that what we are going to do with the bugs and how we are going to handle the bugs. For example, we're going to handle the bugs in the same state as a task, or we're going to handle the bugs in the same state as stories. It's very important decisions that the project managers needs to handle it. In order to define these decisions, the project manager needs to get to the project settings page and go to the project configurations page. I think team configuration. In the team configuration, at the top of this page, there is a working with bug sections that says, okay, what are you going to do with bugs? You are going to manage the bugs just like your requirements, just like your user stories, or just like your, I don't know, the other kind of work item or not. You are just going to manage the bugs just like your tasks. As I told you, tasks are the lower level of the work items. You need to handle the tasks in the sprint boards, but you are going to manage your requirements in your Kanban boards. These are the decisions that the project manager teams needs to be defined. The third option here is that we're going to say that, okay, bugs are not managed on backlogs and boards. It means that we're not going to totally work with bugs, and we do not have any clear procedures to manage the bugs in place. That's where I think that the problem stages in the questions arises. I think they need to check these parts of the Azure DevOps in order to clear their decisions about working with the bugs.
Yeah, and going back to the repositories, it's if you have an existing, I know the answer to this, but I'm just asking it. If you have an existing GitHub repository, you can easily just import it right into Azure DevOps, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't have to start from scratch or anything.
Oh, yeah. Of course, let's do it a try. I'm going to import my GitHub repository into Azure DevOps. For example, suppose that I have a...
Uh-oh. He froze up. Oh, there you go. You froze up there for a second. Your audio's not working. Can you talk? Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're back.
Okay.
I think you're having some internet problems.
Okay. Do you have me again?
Yeah.
Is everything okay here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just get to the GitHub, and I'm going to clone. I'm going to import my GitHub repository into Azure DevOps. I just get to my GitHub page here, and I found a project here in my GitHub. Suppose, for example, DevOps tools, and I'm going to import this repository inside the Azure DevOps. Easily, I can click on code button here and copy the clone URL and get back to the Azure DevOps, and here import repository and paste the clone URL here. As I told you, that the repository I'm going to import is a public repository, so it does not need any authentications. If it was a private repository, I might need to provide my access token.
Right,
okay,
right.
The repository was public repository, and I can import it in the just 2 or 3 clicks. It's processing the request, and after that, it will import the repository from GitHub to the Azure DevOps. Just wait to it's to done. Okay, the import is successful. I'm going to get back to the files menu here. As you see, we have two different repositories, and I have my DevOps tools Git repository here, which is just a README, just like my GitHub repository. And it was really easy to import the repository from GitHub to Azure, though. You have, of course, the vice versa mechanism too. You can easily import your Azure DevOps repository into your GitHub. Of course, the import mechanism is not really based on the tools. It's something that's Git supports itself, and you can import your Git repositories using different service providers. It's not really difficult at that level.
So we only have a couple minutes left. So can you just briefly kind of say what the test plans, the artifacts does, or the pipelines, the test plans, the artifacts?
Okay. Using the pipelines, you have the ability to create your build pipelines using the pipeline menu. Of course, Azure DevOps supports the classic editor and the YAML editor for defining your pipelines. Using the classic editor, you can create your pipelines in ease of use. For example, I'm going to say that I
like this better than the YAML one, personally.
Yeah, of course. It's really good, but using the YAML, you have the IAC capability, you have the infrastructure as a code capability. But for teams that are newcomers to Azure DevOps, or for teams that do not need to struggle with the YAML, with that indentions problems, using the classic interface is really useful. Suppose that I'm going to create a pipeline for my .NET applications. So let's count the clicks I'm going to do to create my pipeline. The first click is click on the continue button. The second click is to apply the ASP.NET template, and that's all over. And I have the pipeline in place.
So much easier than YAML, I tell you that.
And of course, if you need to migrate this classic interface oriented pipeline to YAML pipeline, it's again easy. You can select the Azure job here, click on view YAML. You have the YAML codes to a pipeline, copy the YAML pipeline and put it in everywhere that you need to define your pipeline. This is very easy to define the build pipelines. By going to the release section, you have the ability to create your release pipelines. Again, with these ease of use using the new release button. And again, choosing the template. For example, I'm going to use the Kubernetes cluster deployment and click on apply button, and everything is in place and everything is done. I'm just needs to choose my artifact, the output of my build pipeline, and the rest is ready to apply and ready to work. The test plan sections is the service where you are able to create your test plans. You have the ability to define your test suites, you have your test cases, and start doing ad hoc testing over your softwares. Of course, you have the ability to do the exploratory testing or ad hoc testings manually, or you have the ability to run your tests automatically during your build or release pipelines. This is what you have in test plan services. And the artifact service, the final service of Azure DevOps, is where you can host your NuGet package. For example, suppose that I have a Jinget feed here, and I'm going to host my Jinget package in the Azure DevOps artifact instead of hosting it in a NuGet.org, or instead of hosting it in other service provider. The Azure Artifacts has a really great feature which is called upstream features. It means that you can even store the upstream package that you are going to consume during your development in Azure DevOps. Suppose that during my developments, I've used for example, Apache Thrift package in one of my source codes. Using the upstream capability, the Apache Thrift is being downloaded to my Azure artifacts, and the next time I'm going to use Apache Thrift, it will be restored from Azure DevOps instead of restored from NuGet. It will be great again capability for organization and enterprise. This is the very big picture of Azure DevOps, and a very introduction of the Azure DevOps. I have, beside this kind of things, I have developed some, I think, useful extensions in order to install Windows services during your release pipelines, called Jinget Windows Service Installer, or we have Jinget Query Runner here. in order to execute your T-SQL queries during your pipelines and putting the logs in the Elasticsearch database in order to answer the question that when, who, what did in your database. It's really powerful. Again, after the marketplace, we have developed the Jinget packages. We have Jinget Azure DevOps Connector package here, which helps you to connect to Azure DevOps and consume the Azure DevOps different services, connect to the Azure DevOps OData services or the other kind of services using the Jinget Azure DevOps Connector by using the REST API semantics. You can easily integrate all your software in your organization with Azure DevOps and get connected with Azure DevOps. This, I think, the whole things that I found it.
Well, I've got it. We're already out of time, so I'm going to have to let you go, unfortunately, because I'm really enjoying this. And the one thing I do want to say real quick before I ask my last question is, this is the way I feel, of course, but one of the great things I think Microsoft does well is putting things together that work together, right? Instead of having 5 different services, you have it all in one, right? And I personally, when I go to contracting companies, when I work for companies, right, they use all these different tools, and it's so hard to deal with because each one is different. It's different login, different security. They don't communicate very well with each other. It's why people don't use this more is beyond me, So I got to let you go. But the last question I wanted to ask you, and especially since you're from Iran and I don't know what you guys do there for fun. What do you do for fun besides Azure DevOps?
Of course, spending time with our beloved ones. Of course, spending time with my lovely wife, with my friends. It's I think it's the most important of my free times are going to be spent this way. Watching movies, I'm a very big fan of Al Pacino. I think I watched his movie, each of his movies over 50 times. I
watch a lot of movies too.
This is the hobbies that we have in Iran.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. I definitely want to have you back on in the future. I think this has been really interesting and enlightening, especially, the challenges that you all have to deal with, being in your country. So I thank you so much for being on the show and sharing that information. And if you want to hang out and talk after the show, you're more than welcome to. Sorry.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wow, that was a really, I wasn't expecting that kind of a great session today, and learning about a different culture and learning about, what the other developers have to go through. And yes, many of us, especially in the Western world, takes a lot of the things we have for granted. And so next time you think something is easy, think about, people, struggling with these kind of things in different countries. I'm definitely going to from now on. I think I do, but I'd like to hear more of this so I can become better. Here's my geek humor for today. Copilot, I'm your father. Anybody remember Clippy? What a joke that was. Was that the last one? Yeah, I guess so. So as every week, please help me help the kids from the slums in India. There's pictures of me visiting the Voice of Slum last October when we brought them 5 computers so the kids can learn, not only learn, but also use a computer for their first time. So I'm really proud that we were able to do that. Joe and I were able to do that. And I miss Dave and Chandy. I miss the kids there. It's always a great opportunity. It's a very moving experience to go to the Voice of Slum, but it's something I really, really enjoy doing, especially seeing, how they're progressing during the years since I first met them in 2019. All right. Also, we have to think about our friends in the Ukraine. We're still dealing with this stuff, and we got to get it over and keep so the world can move on. I think I mentioned this last week. I am getting some more hits on my website, dotnettips.com, from the Ukraine the last couple of weeks. And so I'm hoping that's a good sign. So at least for software engineering. All right. So the next show will be on August 5th, taking some weeks off with Arthur, who's been on the show before. I'm going to have 2 shows in August, and that at the very beginning of August, and that's it, because then after that, I'm going to visit family, and then after that, I'm going to Denmark to speak at the conference. As always, please make sure to help your fellow human by donating blood. All the blood shortages, all the blood banks are in shortages right now, especially the one here in San Diego, because they had a fire at their facility and they lost a bunch of blood. And so they're really in dire need right now. So if you live in the San Diego area, please go donate blood right now, because we need it. You're going to need it when you're in the hospital someday. All right. Well, thank you so much. Sorry I went a couple minutes over. I'm glad you all made it. I hope you all come back on August 5th. If you have any questions, comments, or guests you would like me to invite on the show, please email me at rockinthecodeworld@CSharpCorner.com. I checked my email today. I don't have any emails. Come on, send me an email. Just tell me you like the show. All right. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on August 5th.